Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online Alicization anime review. This one's going to be for episode 42, which is called Memories, and this was an incredible episode of Sword Art Online, and this one really delivered because it really focused in on the two main things that it wanted to accomplish here, which was one, big fight between Asuna and Pooh, and then the second thing was of course Kirito's character growth, addressing why he is in this sort of comatose state. What is going to be the thing that snaps him out of it? What is the character arc revelation that's going to happen here to bring Kirito back into the battle? And I thought they did both of them wonderfully for the most part. I have a few nitpicks I'll get into that primarily relate to the Kirito character arc section and what they changed compared to the light novel that I didn't quite agree with, but I'll get to that later on. Let's start off with some analysis on the fight between Asuna and Vizago, Pooh, whatever way you want to call him. So yeah, I really like this because they got into the details and they only left out I think one or two things here with this fight. Like the build up to it actually happening with regards to, Vizago's sort of fresh, he's pretty much just logged back in, he hasn't really been involved in any fights, versus Asuna, who's been fighting the entire time she's been in there. She's been up, down, all over the place with the way the battle has kind of swung back and forth, and she just doesn't have the energy to stand, which is when what does make her stand is the sort of, that incarnation memories of Yuki give her the strength to stand once again, and then later on in the fight they give her the strength to sort of fight back and deliver what seems to be the final blow against Vizago's. But I love this because this is this incarnation thing, because they're in the underworld. Your memories, the way you sort of imagine things has power. So her imagining, Yuki being the one there to back her up, and she is. Her imagining that the sword skill, Mother's Rosario, is in the game, is there for her. But I loved Asuna stepping in to, defend Kirito here. And I really like the conversation they have as they kind of cross blades here, because first of all, of course, Vizago explains his weapon, Mate Chopper, and how when this is the weapon he had from SAO as well, because he's logged in on his SAO account, that this weapon, when you kill monsters with it, its stats go down. When you kill players with it, its stats go up. So for a player killer like Vizago, this is the perfect weapon for him. And the light novel goes into a little bit more detail explaining that if he had just stuck with it and just killed monsters over and over and over again with it, eventually that curse aspect of it would have worn off and the weapon would have upgraded itself into this really high-end katana that wouldn't have had that same trade-off and would be equally as powerful. But Vizago didn't care about that and only cared about, oh great, it supports my player killing and gets better because of it. So the perfect weapon for him. I wish they'd added in that little extra detail, but it got across the basic idea that this is the perfect weapon for him, and the sort of incarnation power that it has is to cause other people to attack each other and just create this sort of, killing sphere situation where just everyone attempts to kill each other. And the reason he's doing this is to try and get Kirito back. Vizago also wants Kirito to stand up again, but for very different reasons than everyone else. And that's what I really liked about this. Like, Asuna calls Poe out, why do you hate Kirito? And he's like, hate? I don't hate him. You of all people, Asuna, should know. I love him, that I see him as the same hero you all do. He's like the perfect hero. He's always there, dependable. He's the one like constant and like pure thing that was there in SAO that no one could defeat. And the whole point of this is that he wants to be the one to defeat Kirito. He wants to be the one to defeat the undefeatable hero. And that's so fitting for ultimately the main villain player in SAO compared to the main hero player in SAO in Kirito. and finally this sort of clash, you know, beginning to happen here. This was the encounter that was always going to have to happen at some point. But it's so interesting that, like, his view on how to bring Kirito back is to create a situation where a hero is needed. People killing each other. They need someone to step in and stop it. And he just hopes that if enough people die, eventually he will realize he's needed and come back. And it's this twisted kind of version of, like, wanting Kirito back versus what everyone else wants Kirito back for. What we as the audience want him back versus what Vizago wants him back for. But I really like that explanation of, like, that's the logic of our villain here. But yeah, the choreography on the fight before they even got into sort of the final blow section was really nice. Of just they're fairly even, they're stepping past each other, but you can tell that Asuna's not like 100%. She's got the boost from Yuki, but if she was like fresh in this fight, it might be different. And then we get to the clash, and Yuki gives her that final bit of strength for her to break the sword clash and then use the skill that shouldn't be in the game because it's obviously a different game. It's obviously from ALO, is Mother's Rosario, yet Asuna can use it here because of the power of incarnation. And it was so wonderful to see that moment of just the sort of spirit of Yuki, like, mirrored with Asuna actually doing it, and them both sort of doing the Mother's Rosario together to take out Pooh here. And that was very fitting because obviously the Mother's Rosario arc was Asuna's main sort of solo arc, so her being backed up by the kind of separate character who is most specific to her was really, really great to see. And she absolutely, like, blows Pooh away here, but they reveal the other aspect of the way Mate Chopper works, which is that it absorbs the sort of life energy of the people dying around them. So it's getting more and more powerful as the fight that he himself is causing everyone to kill each other. And then they reveal that, oh, and by the way, the sword transfers, like, that life energy into him. So even if he looks dead, he has a hole blown in him. He's being kept alive by that sword constantly, adding that life source into him, and that's what keeps him alive. And now Asuna is just completely out of energy. There's no hope left, it seems like. At this point is when, you know, Kirito wakes up again, and let's discuss, like, how that comes about. And this is the main thing I want to say about this is that in general, like, the core emotional beats of this arc, of this moment in this episode of how Kirito comes back, is executed very well in the anime. I think it's just a lot of the, like, details of this. It's very similar to how I felt about the way they did the backstory for Vizago in the last episode, of what they chose to add in or include and what they chose to leave out. And I thought they made a kind of weird choice with that last time out. And sort of similarly, I feel the same here. In the anime, what they do is that they have Kirito basically go through his memories about the sort of things that he feels guilty about, basically. That he has survived through everything, but look at all these other characters who haven't. Look at the things Kirito has sort of been forced to do, the people he's been forced to kill, and the guilt he feels over that, the guilt he feels over surviving when other characters he's met haven't. And so they go through and show Sachi. They then sort of cover, like, the SAO incidents of, like, oh, he has to kill Kuradil, the Laughing Coffin members that he kills, that is brought up quite heavily in the GGO arc and what he deals with. They then show him killing Sugo to defend Asuna. They show him killing Deathgun. And then they switched, of course, to Yu-Gi-Oh, of course. And that's, like, the big one. That's what caused this in the first place, was that they spent an entire season together as, you know, training together, working together, becoming best friends. And they wanted to accomplish this together. And they did, but it took Yu-Gi-Oh sacrificing himself. And that happening, and Kirito being put in that situation again, where once again, he survives when someone else around him doesn't, kind of broke Kirito. and now he's putting all this other stuff on top of that, and they're the wounds that he's constantly inflicting on himself. And I like the visuals of how they showed it, of it's basically as if he is tearing his chest open and is, you know, breaking his own heart, is about to crush his own heart from what he's dealing with. It's really nice, not nice, it's interesting imagery to showcase what exactly Kirito is going through. But the light novel does do it slightly different, and I think it does it different in a kind of better way, even though the same main points are hit. The light novel starts off actually by showing Kirito before SAO and a friend he had there who both participated in the beta test, and he was close to this boy, they played the game together, but like we know of Kirito from before SAO, he just sort of drifted away from him. He kind of realized, oh, I'm getting too close to him, I need to back away. And it was that loner Kirito kind of coming back out again. And so he isolated himself, they sort of stopped being friends. And the scene that they show is that boy getting bullied by a lot of the bullies. And Kirito walks by and doesn't do anything. The boy reaches out to him as in, like, help me, please, like, we're friends, weren't we? And Kirito just walks by and doesn't do anything. And of course, now, in the emotional situation he's in, he blames himself for that just as much as everything else. But then the second thing they go to is actually from volume 8 of the light novels. It's one of the few things from like the normal numbered volumes that they didn't animate for some reason in the anime, which was on the first day of SAO, Kirito trying to get his anneal blade and hunting the items that is needed for that. He teamed up with another player who wanted to do the same thing. Kirito gets the item first, and the other guy reacts by basically trying to get Kirito killed by all the monsters in that area that they're hunting. He turns on his hiding skill, thinking that this will basically make it all the monsters against Kirito, and he'll just wait for Kirito to get killed and steal that item. He doesn't realize that the hiding skill won't work against these monsters, and so Kirito is able to sort of get away, but he, in hiding in the middle of them, is the one who actually gets killed. And even though it was this kind of like situation where Kirito could have died, he still kind of bemoans the sense that, like, I didn't act to even try and help him. What does that, like, make me, basically? And then they go into Sachi, and then they go into Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of like they focus pretty much exclusively just on the people Kirito didn't save and the guilt that he feels over that, because the core of his recovery is fundamentally about Yu-Gi-Oh! That just Asuna, Sinon, and Sugaha alone aren't enough to just bring Kirito back. Their kind of willingness to sort of forgive him and sort of like envision a version of Kirito who can forgive himself isn't enough for the character. And so I like the quick cutout to Higa noting that, like, why isn't this enough? Wait, what's this item that's trying to connect to Kirito? And it's clearly the blue rose sword, because, you know, the way the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Died was that he basically sort of like turned himself into the sword. So there's an element of like Yu-Gi-Oh! That is still in that sword. But that's the thing that finally allows Kirito to forgive himself, of just seeing them all note that, you know, we're connected to you, will always be connected to you, and that Yu-Gi-Oh! Especially being the one to say to him that I'm still here in your memories. I'm not alive, but I'll always be here in your memories if you choose to remember me. And so he asks, like, that one final time, like, you know, is it okay for me to sort of walk and step up again? And Yu-Gi-Oh! Says yes, and this is finally what gets him back. And so the four sort of key characters in like Kirito's life put their hands on his, and that's the final step. And I think that just worked really, really well as the character arc here to bring Kirito back into the show after all this time. Like, he's been gone for all of these episodes since the first half of Alicization. That's a very long period of time for your main character to be gone, but it worked so well to have him back. Like, the way they did the music for him finally returning, And especially the way they did the actions of just like he's still on the ground but just activates the blue rose sword because that's the one he's holding and freezes everyone, and you hear him sort of like speak for the first time. It works so well. And then finally, as all this is happening, you see him stand up, you see him sort of like block Pooh's blast, his attack against Asuna, and she's just like, welcome back, Kirito, and he's like, I'm back, Asuna, and they end it there. And it's a big cliffhanger because you want to see, like, say something more, Kirito, like, do something more. But that's what the entirety of, like, next episode is going to be. It's just going to be Kirito doing Kirito things, and we've been waiting for that for a while, given how the battle has ended up going. So I just thought, like, overall, really, really great episode. Asuna gets her big moment to shine, being exceptionally strong against Pooh, actually, you know, defeating him, if not for the way his sword works. And especially the way they, like they do with Kirito, you know, they bring in, like, the key events from her past of, it's Yuki the one to give her strength, whereas with Kirito, it's, you know, Asuna, Suguha, Sinon, and Yujio. All four, not just three, required to bring Kirito back. I thought that worked really, really well. That you thought the three girls alone, that would do it. But no, you'd almost, in a way, forgotten about Yujio, just because Kirito's been out of action so long. So of course we haven't really seen much mention of Yujio. So I thought that just really, really delivered to finally address that again, that is the root cause of, like, everything that's happened here, is Kirito feeling guilty for once again surviving when someone else hasn't. The only thing I'd say, going back to the difference between the light novel and the anime, is that I do think they should have included the scene with the boy who Kirito was friends with before SAO, before, like, actual SAO, like during the beta test. I don't think they needed the thing with Kopel, the boy who tries to sort of monster kill Kirito on the first floor, just because for anime viewers, like, that scene would have hit if that was actually animated, that scene from, like, volume 8, but it wasn't. So I get why they left that out. I don't get why they didn't do it with the pre-SAO stuff, because I think it would have really further highlighted just how much Kirito is blaming and hurting himself by bringing in all of his weaknesses, all of these weak points from even before he was, like, the person that he now is. Like, addressing that, yeah, before SAO, he was a very different person. He struggled to connect to people, and that's the key point in the first arc of SAO, was when he finally made that connection with Asuna, that through the path of, you know, joining the Moon, the Black Cats, and then the failure there, but then trying again with, like, Lisbeth and Silka and, like, Egil and Klein, and especially Asuna. Finally, he actually is around people he can trust, who trust him, and he comes out of SAO having friends. So I think it would have been very significant to just highlight that this is who Kirito was before all of that. They touched on it, like, very lightly at the start of the ALO arc with how he treated Suguha after he found out the kind of, you know, truth about the kind of family dynamic. And I think it would have been great to just highlight that, but with someone else just showing you further that, yeah, like, he's grown a lot as a character from the guy who just entered SAO at the start and wanted to be that sort of solo player, and further emphasizes stuff like why there was the hesitation at the start about teaming up with, like, Klein, and why he didn't want to do it, and why, even though he was sort of forced into the situation, how he so, like, easily accepted becoming the beater to you know, make everyone hate him so he could be on his own even further, and so on. I just think that scene would have helped to really push it over the edge, and I don't think they quite needed to put in the scene of, like, say, him killing Sugo, because, you know, in a way it's kind of like, why in any way should he feel guilt over that? For one, it was in the game, and I get the whole pain threshold thing was turned off, so he actually did sort of hurt Sugo there. But Sugo was still alive afterwards and then got arrested, so... And he was one of the most, like, villainous characters in the entire show. So... And the same with Death Gun, but like they're the two things like I wasn't exactly sure what I was meant to take away from that, in terms of like, are you just showing me a recap here, or is there a like thematic reason behind that? I think they were kind of trying to include the idea of like, look at all the people you've killed, including these people who you killed in the game but you didn't actually affect in the real world. And I don't think that quite worked, because I think there is a difference between the 3 people he killed from SAO and him defeating Sugo and him defeating Death Gun. So it was just that sort of slight nuance of that situation of like, why did you pick that instead of doing that? Because I think a lot of people would have really appreciated like covering more of the kind of bully incident than just recapping those scenes and trying to make a little bit more out of them than is actually there. But we have Kirito back. You know, you could see just on Asuna's face how happy she was to see him back, and now we're going to get Kirito versus Vizago. Finally, like we've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for Kirito to return. Now, stuff is going to happen, but let's not forget, Subtilizer's still out there. So that still has to come back into play as well. So, yeah, they're my thoughts on this incredible episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.